There are many things that can sway someone's opinion on a game. A deal breaker for one might be what makes the game for another. For me, whether or not I enjoy a game really boils down to 5 main sections: characters, story, exploration, combat, and music. Not necessarily in that order. Now, without further ado, let's get into my thoughts on Persona 2 Innocent Sin. Now that I have played a Persona 2 game, I can officially say that I have experienced the vibe of every main title in the Persona series. Like many Persona fans out there, I got my start with Persona 5, Vanilla Not Royal, and worked backwards from there, skipping right over Persona 2 due to how difficult it was to find a copy of the game at the time I wanted to play it, and instead opting for Persona 1 instead. I now understand why there is a little bit of a divide between Persona fans, what with the first 3 games, that being 1, Innocent Sin, and Eternal Punishment, lacking quite a few significant qualities that are typically associated with modern Personas, such as social links. That being said, I think one of my favorite things about playing the Final Fantasy series was playing them from oldest to newest and seeing how the series evolved over time. However, playing Persona backwards and seeing the roots of the things that I liked so much in Persona 5 also had its own unique charm to it. Persona 1, at its core, had everything I associate with a Persona game: an interesting story, compelling characters, fun combat, Persona fusion, and in some way or another we fight God at the end. Persona 2, however, was the birthplace of palaces, shadows as we know them now, all-out attacks, and even the first social links. So it's pretty important in the series' development. Now, I've gone on long enough, so let's delve into a little more detail, shall we? Now, if you're someone like me, then the only thing you probably knew about Persona 2 going into it is that Hitler is in it. You're not sure how or why, but you know that he is there. I went into Persona 2 very similarly to how I went into Persona 1, virtually blind. Our game begins with the introduction of 3 characters: Tatsuya, or us, Ginkgo, one of our classmates who has a massive crush on us, and Eikichi, the death boss of the other school, Kashai, and Tatsuya's rival. Much like Persona 1, our game starts off with a strange phenomenon taking over the town. Except instead of it being demons, it's the fact that an entity named Joker is making people's dreams come true in order to steal them, and by doing so is turning these dreamers into shadow men, essentially husks of people that eventually fade away. At the beginning of the game, Joker throws a flower at our feet, meaning revenge. So obviously he's got a little bit of a grudge against us, but we're not really sure why. Accompanying this Joker guy's appearance is the fact that any and all rumors that are believed by the masses are coming true, going so far as to distort the reality of the world. It is while dealing with one of these rumors back at our school, Seven Sisters High, that we meet Maya and Yukino, the other half of our party. With our team assembled, we begin to dive right into the investigation of Joker and what exactly his motives with everyone's dreams are. Alright, now I'm gonna spoil a large chunk of the story, so you have been warned if you didn't want spoilers. Okay. Throughout the game, my mind sort of split the story into 2 things. And let me preface this by saying that I guessed that our childhood friend, Jun, the one that gave Tatsuya the lighter that he's always playing with, was Joker from the first cutscene he was shown in. As soon as they showed this kid giving Tatsuya his lighter, I was like, that's Joker. I know it. All of the plot that revolved around our friend group remembering each other from their childhoods and working out the mystery of what exactly happened to them to cause such a rift between everybody was very interesting. I was super invested in that plot. However, the game did start to lose me when Hitler and the aliens were pushed more to the forefront. At its heart, it wasn't very hard to understand. Jun, or Joker, wasn't actually the one causing the rumors, and was acting as a puppet to someone we know as Jun's father, or later we find out the Great Father. Hitler was brought back due to the common conspiracy theory that he lived, and he, as well as some other characters such as Miss Ideal, were attempting to kill off the world's population based off an ancient ritual left to the Mayans by aliens in order to ascend humanity to a greater plane of existence, a promised land of sorts. So I understood what was going on, or at least the general idea of what was happening after a little bit of thinking, but it was so silly to me that it was kind of jarring. It was like jarred me out of the immersion. However, once we got to the final dungeon and they started to really tie everything back to our very strong main cast of characters, I was engaged again. Another really cool thing about Persona 2 is that there are a lot of different ways you can influence the game. There's a lot of different choices that have an effect on which personas you're able to obtain, your relationships with other characters, and even whether or not certain characters die. This caused me a little bit of anxiety because I accidentally spoiled for myself early on that Yukino could die, but I didn't know when or how, and she was my favorite character, so I really didn't want to accidentally kill her off, but it was fine. Outside of that, the only big thing was the ending. The ending gutted me. I'm such a sucker for the whole forgotten trope, whether it's by society or each other or whatever. And when we beat the boss and we should have been celebrating only to have Maya die so abruptly, very promptly followed by the four of us choosing to undo our meeting so we could move to a timeline where the events of the game never happened. It was so sad, and even with the promise that they'd meet again in different circumstances, it's like they're not even really the same people anymore because it's a different timeline. You know, because any one event changing in our past changes who we are as a person. So it's kind of like, no, I just wanted my children to be happy. But yeah, I'm so excited to get into Eternal Punishment. And that brings me to the stars of the show, the characters. If we're talking honesty hours right now, I think that Persona 2 has my favorite cast of characters to date. Each one is presented in such a human way, and they each are given a chance to shine in the story, and it just made me feel so attached to every single one of them. It's also very apparent throughout the story, the dynamics between the characters and how they balance each other out in a group setting, and it's just very, very well done. Eikichi is one of my favorite characters, and he's the first to get his own arc. He's this narcissistic high school boy who wants to be the lead singer in his own band. He's considered the boss of Cuss High, and while that does serve to inflate his ego, it is clear that he cares very much for the well-being of the students of his school. Eikichi is shown as a delinquent who admits that he uses his title as boss as an excuse to beat people up with his persona. However, despite the fact that he remains the impulsive, self-centered hothead we meet at the beginning of the game, he also begins to focus more on people outside of himself, such as his classmates, who became Shadow Men, and his old childhood friends. Eikichi and Ginko were also two of my favorite characters to watch throughout the game. I really liked how they got closer as the game went on, and that's even reflected in the labels through the contact system. Also, because I kept forgetting that Cozy existed as a character, I was more invested in Ginko and Eikichi than I was in the romance surrounding the main protagonist. Moving right along, Ginko is one of my favorite characters, and her plot has to do with her feeling like an outsider. She's a girl who looks foreign with blonde hair and blue eyes, however she was raised Japanese and doesn't speak any English, making her something of a freak at the schools she went to, and the subject of bullying when she was a child. When she is confronted by the mass circle, she is picked at for not having any dream, unlike the rest of the party. Later on in the game, that's amended a little bit to being a useless dream because Ginko's main goal is to marry Tatsuya. In the Taurus Temple while facing her shadow, Ginko claims that her love is her own and it makes her strong, regardless of whether or not Tatsuya reciprocates, even going as far as saying that my feelings are my own business. And that was so incredibly mature of her, and it isn't a line of thought I typically associate with the protagonist crazy girls that exist in anime and games, that it made me love Ginko even more than I already did. Yukino is one of my favorite characters, period. I'm currently playing through the Snow Queen route in Persona 1 in order to get more insight into her character, because Innocent Sin just made me adore her. Seeing her pursue her photography dreams despite her doubts in herself and after the death of her mentor is really inspiring. But I think my favorite part of Yuki's story is how she's trying to act as a role model for Anna. It's a really cool full circle moment because Yuki was so similar to Anna, but Miss Psycho helped set her straight, and now she's trying to do the same thing for someone younger than herself. Yuki's just so cool. I love her so much. I also love the Persona 1 characters just showing up in general. I was collecting screenshots of them like they were freaking Pokemon. I really wish Mark and Ayase popped up because the main protagonist Naureen is mentioned, so I would have gotten all of them, but unfortunately they're not in either Persona 2 game. And that brings me to Maya. Maya wasn't a character I really jive with at first. Her unending optimism seemed so out of place with what was going on in the story. But the more that I came to understand her character and the fact that it's not that she doesn't feel negative emotions, it's just that she is such a strong believer in people and people's dreams that she kind of moves past her doubt. And that just made me come to like her a lot. All of her interactions with the cosplaying girl whose name I can't pronounce really helped with that too, because just when she told like the cosplaying girl that she can't kill herself because that's really selfish because she has to, that because people love her and people are there for her, I was just like, Maya, she's such a good character. And lastly, that brings me to Jun. So as I mentioned earlier, I guessed that Jun was Joker very early on. So I spent the whole game wondering what circumstances led to him becoming the way he was. I thought it was really cool that essentially the entire plot of the game had to do with Jun's desire to have his ideal father. And it's something that I found easy to relate to because families can be very messy, so it's easy to sometimes wish for what you don't have rather than appreciating what you do. Despite Jun joining the party pretty late, he grew on me really, really quickly. I loved his little personality quirks like his obsession with flowers and his love of horoscopes. And I just really liked seeing him interact with everyone because it was clear that he was very important to all four of us. Also, fun fact, I did the Taurus Temple first at the end of the game. And at the end of the temple, when Tatsuya was allowed to choose who he had feelings for, I chose Jun. And I didn't pick him because I really liked him. I was pretty indifferent to him at the time. But I'm so used to later Persona games where despite all the buildup, they will not let you romance guys, that when it actually went through with Jun, I was like pretty shook. Because I wasn't super invested in his relationship with Maya or Ginkgo, and I was just like indifferent towards Jun, I left the decision the way it was. I didn't reload or anything. But I'm kind of glad that I picked it because the game did seem like it was kind of pushing Jun and Tatsuya with the whole lighter and watch thing in the opening and the fact that everyone calls Jun Tatsuya's shadow or other half. So I was kind of happy that I ended up making that decision by accident. In conclusion, I think what makes the cast of characters so unique in Persona 2 is that each one has a different dynamic with each other, and we explore every single one. We see the dynamic between Maya and Yuki, we see Eikichi and Ginkgo, we see Eikichi and Jun. We even go as far as seeing their relationships with NPCs like their parents, or seeing like the Persona 1 characters interact with them. It's just really cool that the characters aren't defined by their relationship with the main character. Like, we see them outside of that role. And that brings me to the combat. Now that I have sufficiently praised the storytelling and characters, I can talk about it. I wasn't the biggest fan of the combat in this game. It wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I didn't like 3 big things about it, and that was 1, the character animations felt a lot slower, so it felt like combat dragged on. 2, because the move speed of the characters in the map is so fast and the encounter rate is based off distance traveled, it felt like the encounter rate was really, really high, and combined with point number 1, made dungeon crawling a pain in the ass. 3, the game was really, really easy. I played about half of it set to normal mode, and I was essentially contacting my way through every fight and still not struggling with the bosses. I switched to hard after that, and I still thought the game was really easy up until about the last 2 bosses in the final dungeon. That being said, there were some things in Persona 2 that I thought were really, really cool. The first one being fusion spells. Basically, they were combined attacks between multiple party members into one big attack, so essentially it was the birthplace of all-out attacks and showtimes, which is awesome. The other thing I really enjoyed was the contact system. Similarly to Persona 1, each character has 4 options of dialogue, and that causes one of the 4 emotions of the demon to go up. The thing that was cool about it on the player side was that you were able to communicate in groups instead of just by yourself. So like I could combine Yuki, Tatsuya, and Eikichi, and they would straight up beat the shit out of a demon, and usually the demons liked that for some reason. It was cool to see the tags for the characters change as the game progressed, like how Eikichi and Lisa went from fights like cats and dogs to brawling buddies to friends through fighting. It was a cool little insight into how the characters warmed up to one another, and I really appreciated that. On the demon side, the happiness emotion had a new effect. Essentially, you could form a pact with a demon, and then when you next saw it, if you made it eager, it would give you extra cards, and if you made it happy, you could ask it for money, cards, rumors, or to spread rumors for you. I accidentally found Maya's and Eikichi's legendary weapons by doing that, so it was a pretty cool gameplay addition. So as I mentioned earlier, demons are able to give you and spread rumors for you. People also do that in town, and that's how you're able to unlock various side quests. I usually forgot to spread the rumors at the police station though, so I missed out on a bunch of them because once you progress the story, they're not possible to complete anymore. The other extra thing was the abandoned factory. It was just an extra dungeon with a bunch of hidden stuff that could be found through demon conversations. I was determined to complete this dungeon because I knew that Nanjo and Reiji were in it and I had to add them to my screenshot collection. There were a few other extra things you could do like gambling, and there were also some side missions in the theater, but I wasn't really interested in either and as such did not spend a huge amount of time exploring the benefits of doing either. And that brings me to the music. I played the PSP version of Persona 1, which had the updated soundtrack that sounds similar to later Persona games, and as such there were a lot of tracks with lyrics, which I appreciate because I am a huge fan of lyric analysis, but I also really loved how much emotion they were able to convey through instrumental pieces in the game. I loved all of the character themes in Persona 2. I honestly wish character themes were something they did in new Persona games because being able to express a character through an instrumental piece is just so fundamentally powerful for me. It's like one of my favorite things about Kingdom Hearts. I'm getting a little sidetracked though. My favorite theme in Persona 2 would have had to be the sad version of Ginkgo's theme. The battle theme also reminded me of Street Fighter, and that was cool too. Random thoughts I had while playing the game. I think it's really cool that they went through the effort to change Maya's portrait and her tags when it wasn't the real her. The fact that you were able to scare demons away by being gay was so funny to me. On the topic of Jun in general, I had a suspicion that he liked Tatsuya, and then I was combining characters to see their dynamics to take pictures of it, and I combined Maya, Tatsuya, and Jun, and it said something about it being a love triangle, and I got like really excited, and I was like, holy shit, queer rep. And then I had to physically calm myself down because I reminded myself, this is a Persona game, Jun probably just has a crush on Maya, and that's why it's a love triangle. And then I clicked on Ginkgo and Jun, and it specifically said they were rivals over Tatsuya, and my jaw dropped. I was like, queer rep in a Persona game? In an old Persona game? We're so back. But it also makes me question why they didn't go through with the whole Akechi thing, or like the Yosuke thing in Persona 4 and 5, because it's not like they hadn't set a precedent for it earlier. But I digress, that's a talk for another day. As some of you may know, Brown in Persona 1 is voiced by Keith Silverstein, and despite me knowing his voice, it slipped past me and I didn't recognize it, and it happened again because he voices Tatsuya too and I didn't recognize it, and I'm so mad at myself. Building on that, I recognized Jun's voice actor as well, and it turned out to be Bryce Papenbrook, and it's so funny to me that Chat Noir voices Jun and Hawkmoth voices Tatsuya. I actually lost it. I hope Persona 2 does get a remake because with a bit of polish, I think it would be really popular. I love this bird that I found at the park. It makes me laugh. I didn't go to the police station until over halfway through the game, so like after it burned down. And as such, I didn't know that Tatsuya had a brother until that point in the game, and then I talked to him and he was like saying this stuff that I felt like was building on something he said before, and I was just like, I didn't even know I had a brother. This is so wacky. The weirdest thing to me in Persona 2 actually isn't any of like the Hitler or alien stuff. It was the fact that not one, but two of the main cast of characters, like main party members, were older than me. I'm so used to them being high school students that when Maya was like, yeah, I'm 23, I was like, what the heck? You're older than me? Shooketh. I know I said that I was indifferent about Jun, but that actually wasn't true, and it wasn't because I didn't like him at first, it was just because he replaced Yuki in my party, so I was just like, get out of here, I don't want you here, I want Yukino back. But then he actually grew on me, and I was kind of like, oh, okay, you can stay, I guess. But yeah, I do really love Yukino. There was a shop in town that sold CDs, and I got a rumor about them having a secret CD, and that was how I found out about the shop in the first place. And as soon as I knew that I could buy the soundtrack, I bought every single CD. I don't know why I have such an obsession with buying the soundtracks in games, because I do that in Final Fantasy X as well. Even though it's I have access to YouTube, I don't need to buy the soundtrack, but I have to. In In conclusion, now that I can officially talk about all the Persona games except Eternal Punishment, I have to say the whole series is really solid. The way that Persona 2 deals with topics like dreams and aspirations, as well as the realities of growing up and having to face the challenges that come with those dreams, is really well done and mature. I love the inclusion of adult characters and a setting outside of the typical high school. Also, I love Yukino. So all in all, very good game, and I recommend giving Persona 2 Innocent Sin a try if you're going to take a foray into old Persona games. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.